Faith-based, community-driven streaming media. This is The Voice 17104.com from the Allison Hill District of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Now broadcasting community radio from Studio A and community television from Studio B on The Voice 17104.com.
Welcome, my brothers and sisters, to the Richard James Show on 17104, The Voice. I am my mother's dream. I am my father's vision. While working construction, he sweated away his years so I could be who I am. I am my daughter's image of what a man should be. I represent the strong, the healthy, the love of a father who will give her the wisdom she needs to meet life's challenges. Mary, I am the reason Moses crossed the Red Sea. I am the dream that Martin Luther King spoke of. But most of all, I am Lula Mae's son, the only one who ate her sweet potato pie and grew up into manhood because of her love. I am who I am, a mother's dream, a father's vision of the future, a young woman's guide and protector. You have to excuse me, I'm doing this at home, and then sometimes things come up that we are inadvertent. So we just had a little knock on the door, so I had to call mama so she could take care of that for me. In fact, she takes care of everything for me. She's truly, truly a blessing. Today, we're going to raise up African-American women participation in politics. African-American participation in politics. We have had a number of shows that we've dealt with the inequality that is heaped upon our African-American sisters. This happens all the time. The so-called glass ceiling has not been shattered. The so-called glass ceiling is there. Why is Richard James, a man, a heterosexual man with a woman that he's been married to for 50 years, why is he so concerned with what happens to women? Well, for that reason, because I'm a man. I am blessed to have a woman that I've been married to for a half a century. A true, true blessing. I have 3 wonderful daughters, and every last daughter that I have is a leader in her own right. In education administration, in state government, all my daughters are leaders because we didn't teach them to walk in the shadow of anybody. We didn't teach them that they had to be a follower to a male. Not at all. They are leaders in their own right. And when we try to upend our women, and in fact, to think that we have to be superior to them in order for them to make a contribution, then you're crazy. But what's happening today is that women have caught on. They are leaders. The area of politics is a very critical and very important area because we're talking about the administrators, those who develop policy and direction for government. And as you know, government affects every phase of our life. And to tell you the truth, I spent almost my entire history in government and social administration. And I'm just gonna tell you, brothers, sorry, there's something very special about women, and there's something extremely special in my heart with African-American women. They bring something to the table, brothers, that we don't bring to the table. Compassion, a sensitivity, or shall we say skills for detail, that we find among African American sisters. And what happened is all over the nation, African American women are rising up. They are rising up to the task. This is happening. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, this is what's happening. We have seen in some of our major cities, women be elected into meritorial positions. As a matter of fact, we have a primary election that's taking place in the Big Apple. That's what I refer to New York, and that's happening today, where we have a sister and a brother and an Asian that are all running, and I think Hispanic also, all running for the same office. And what you need to do is really look at each candidate's record and positions to decide where you're going to go. They got a man named Adams, who is the president of the Bureau I think the Bureau of Brooklyn, which is one of the largest, if not the largest, bureau within the city of New York. We have a young lady who's an attorney. She also is a journalist, and she also has appeared on many television shows we've seen all the time, who is a progressive and is supported by the progressive wing of the party, who's running for mayor. It looks like we have a really, really great chance of having an African-American to become mayor of the city, and we have a great chance of having an African-American female becoming the mayor of New York. That would be a first, a very first. Currently, we have a African-American female who's the mayor of Atlanta, Georgia, one of the major cities of the South, if not the major city in the South. Atlanta is like at the crossroads, rail, air, whatever you want, whatever you're looking at. In terms of business, Atlanta is king. We have an African-American female. It's not the first one to be mayor of Atlanta, that's mayor. Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States. This wonderful Black female mayor has done a wonderful job in Washington, D.C., and they're trying to fight for statehood for Washington. Why not? There's over 600,000 individuals in Washington, D.C., or better known as the District of Columbia. And there's a lot of things that they have that's independent. It's not a state, so they got their own system. They have their own police force, their own legislature. They have their own system of government. And all they need is for Congress to stop BSing and send them into where they need to be in the statehood. And we have an African-American female that's heading up that effort. All over the country, New Orleans, Black female mayor of the city of New Orleans, the Big Easy, one of the most beautiful tourist spots in the continental United States, New Orleans, African-American female heading up that spot. We have African-Americans that are mayor in, I think it's a male, and mayor in the city of Birmingham, Alabama, all over the South. Even in Mississippi, you'll find that African-Americans and African-Americans female are coming to the fore in their participation in the electoral process. And as a reaction to that, the Republican Party is trying to suppress the African-American vote. Let me say it very clearly. The Republican Party, leaning heavily toward its racist, sexist agenda, all over the country is introducing legislation to destroy the African-American vote. I didn't think I'd ever say that. I spent over 20 years working inside of the Republican Party. People say, oh, whoa, how in the world did you do that? I did it. Because I always believed in the two-party system. that we need to be represented on both sides of the aisle, the political aisle. And yeah, I was involved in the Republican Party. It was a different kind of party then. It was the party of Rockefeller, Eisenhower, Richard Nixon. There were different kind of folks. Because during those days, the Democrats, or so-called Dixiecrats, who were Democrats, were the ones that were pushing forth a racist, intolerant agenda. That's right, the Dixiecrats. And I fought against the Dixiecrats. And believe it or not, and some of you folks don't know your history, you don't know that slavery was ended by the Republican Party. That's a fact. Abraham Lincoln was not a Democrat. He was a Republican. You see, you got to keep up on the facts. Times change. Organizations change. People change. And we need to change with it. And we need to be aware of what is going on in our country. And I'm saying to you, it is time for the Black woman to stand up, forthright, and take her role in a leadership position. I'll tell you where there's a good possibility where we may have another Black female mayor. A very, 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 very good possibility that our next mayor for the city of Harrisburg will be a Black female. I love it. Our first Black female mayor in Harrisburg was Linda Thompson. Linda Thompson had a rough road to hoe, but she went up against a man who had been mayor for 26 years. And when I saw that race come up, I liked Stephen Reed, I'll be honest with you. I thought he did some good things while he was mayor, but I thought it was time for a change, and I support Linda Thompson. And I knew Steve, I felt that Steve would have a hard time beating Linda just because of her work ethic. And Linda kicked butt. And she became the first female and the first African-American to be mayor of the capital city for the state of Pennsylvania, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And we made Wanda Williams as a possibility to become the second Black female mayor. She was the head of city council. She's a wonderful, very, very capable individual. I don't think she comes with some of the baggage that maybe Linda had. Linda came with a lot of intelligence, a lot of energy, a lot of drive, but sometimes her words got her in trouble, particularly with white residents of the city. We have got to be stewards for all people. And we got to not only be stewards for all people, we got to let all people know that. We've got to communicate with, work with, and make sure it happens. Not just for African Americans, but for Asian Americans, for white Americans, for Jewish Americans. You represent people, and you've got to project that. I think Linda's a wonderful, wonderful individual. I think she's a beautiful person. I understand she's in the ministry, and I'd love to have her on my show. In fact, I'm going to reach out to her and see if I can get her, because she got things to do. And she made some great contributions when she was mayor. Rising up women in the political arena. All over the country, they're coming to the forefront. They're taking their seat at the table. We have a situation now where Republicans are trying to destroy Black people's, minority people's, poor people's right to vote. They're doing it in state after state after state after state. And we have got to make sure that we counteract that. We got a bill coming up before the Senate today, a voting rights bill. And we got a senator who is a Democrat out of West Virginia, who's a roadblock. And I think if he's a roadblock, we need to push him out of the way. That's what I believe. Vote him out, do something to get him out. We need all our Democrats to stand together to make the changes that are needed. And we got a bill to try to counteract all the states who are raising up voter suppression laws to stop people from being able to vote early. They even got a provision in Georgia where you can't give water to people standing in line. You can't give them a bottle of water in the heat or in the cold. You can't give them a cup of tea. They wrote that in because they predominate the Georgia legislature. They were very much upset when we had two individuals, Democrat, that these was elected senators in the state of Georgia. And they don't like that. So they had one of the most anti-vote, most Jim Crow law back in my home state. I was born in Georgia. I was born in Thomasville, Georgia, December 8th, 1941. And what they're trying to do is destroy our ability to vote. And they're doing that not only in the state of Georgia, the Georgia Peach State. I call it Peach State and the Pecan State. Love Georgia, but I don't love racism. And I don't love what they're doing to us in Georgia. They're trying to denounce us and to stop our ability to vote. They're doing that to us. They're raising up racism. They're carrying it out. But Wyoming and other states throughout the country are doing the same thing. And that's why they're trying to raise up this bill in the Congress. Joe Biden's a good man. He's a man with a decent heart. He's brilliant, and he's on our side. People talk about Joe being from Scranton, Pennsylvania. He was born in Scranton, but the man actually was not raised in Wilmington. He was raised in Claymont, Delaware. Claymont, Delaware, an area with a huge Black population, an area where my children grew up. Claymont, two of my children grew up in Claymont, Delaware. As a matter of fact, some of my friends worked for the Biden family. I think they did some domestic work, that kind of thing. But Joe Biden's a good man. But Joe, you got to fight these bigots. You got to bring them to the table. And if they're not going to roll with you, if they don't want to be bipartisan, you got to go yourself. I think that's really important. Oh, excuse me. I got all kinds of interference today that's just going on. You cut this thing off. Yeah, we need to do this. So things are moving forward, and we're going to right now. We're going to move ahead, and we're going to start this video. Voting rights. Black Americans, while Black women matters. Voting rights for Black Americans, while Black women matters in the voting booth, where Black women represent us. And we think that you're going to enjoy it and you're going to get something out of it. Okay, here we go.
Hello, everyone. My name is Naomi Smith, and I'm so excited to welcome you to our second Voting Rights in Black America Brain Trust session, Why Black Women Leadership Matters. We have a dynamic panel for you today, and you'll hear some from the most brilliant Black women in politics today. So before we begin, I'd like to thank our sponsors, the Executive Leadership Council, Union Pacific Railroad, Lyft, and STARS. Now, I'd like to introduce our first sponsor speaker, Ms. Crystal Ashby. Crystal Ashby is the interim president and CEO of the Executive Leadership Council, the preeminent organization for Black CEOs, board of directors, and the most senior Black executives at Fortune 1000, Global 500, and equivalent companies. She leads the organization's efforts to increase the number of global Black executives in C-suites, on corporate boards, and in global enterprises. She is the first woman president CEO of the organization and traces her association with the ELC to her participation in the first class of the ELC's Strengthening the Pipeline Leadership Development Program. Ms. Ashby is an accomplished senior executive, board member, and lawyer with more than 34 years of experience, significantly in the energy sector. Her corporate leadership was gained over a 22-year career with BP, where her role spans from government and external affairs, law, compliance, ethics, university relations, and retail. Thank you, Ms. Ashby, and we welcome your remarks.
Thank you, Naomi. It's good to see you again. Good afternoon and welcome to everyone joining us today. The Executive Leadership Council is honored to serve as a partner on today's important voter issue forum hosted by the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. At the ELC, we are working to ensure every eligible voter is ready and registered to exercise their voice, their vote, and their power in the November elections next week. Thank you, CBCF, for this opportunity to partner with you to ensure everyone is registered to vote and educated on all the issues affecting our community. One of the ELC's most valuable investments this year has been supporting organizations and efforts committed to registering people to vote, specifically our people, the Black community, because our voice is critical in shaping the future of our communities. Our nation is at a critical moment, and everyone must know the leaders we have to elect in November will make decisions that affect our lives forever. You have the power to impact the direction of this country by voting. Now let's talk about Black women, the sisters. Black women have and continue to play a monumental role in driving our community's shared goal. Black women are leading the resistance in and out of government. Our collective impact and power has been a driving force for our communities this fall in encouraging robust civic engagement efforts. Being leaders like that is not new for us. At least 61 Black women, 48 Democrats and 13 Republicans will appear on ballots across the country for Congress in November. This number is markedly higher than the previous record of 41 Black women congressional candidates, which was set in 2018. A record number of Black women also took part in the primary contest for majority party House nominations this year as well. Black women have outvoted men in every presidential election since 1980. Let's pause. Let's think about that. And let me say it again. Black women have outvoted men in every presidential election since 1980. We vote our values, but with the increasing social tensions and awareness, this time feels different. Black women are stepping into our power unlike any other time. Black women's buying power is typically higher than others. You cannot ignore the dollars. Our economic power is impactful, yet it's too often undervalued. And that's why today's conversation is so important. 2020 is a critical year for women, for Black women. The pandemic has forced more caretaking on women, and we're losing jobs in greater numbers than men. Black women are being hit the hardest. So now is the time for us to fight harder, to claim the power that belongs to us, to use our voices at the polls, in our communities, wherever you see a need. The good news is that we are in this fight together, as is evidenced by the women you see on this screen. So let's keep going. We can make a difference because we still have good trouble to get into. Thank you all so much and enjoy this conversation.
Thank you for kicking off our session, Ms. Ashby. I'm so excited to watch everyone hear and learn from you all. Now I'd like to introduce our second sponsor remarks from Ms. Tanya Conley. Ms. Conley is the Senior General Attorney for Union Pacific Railroad. She joined the organization in 2006 and has advanced through a variety of roles in the law department. Tanya is a leader on the commercial legal team of Union Pacific Railroad Company, responsible for providing leadership and guidance for a variety of corporate matters, including strategic sourcing, bankruptcy, credit, regulatory, antitrust, real estate, and commercial transactions. Tanya is also currently the president of the Omaha chapter of the Union Pacific Black Employee Network, a 30-year-old employee resource group that is dedicated to recruiting, retaining, developing, and advancing the career of Black employees at Union Pacific. Please welcome Ms. Conley.
Hi, thank you. I am thrilled to be part of this discussion today. Union Pacific values its longstanding partnership with the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation and is happy to sponsor today's panel discussion. Union Pacific understands the significant role that Black women play, not only in advancing our company's goals of an inclusive and equitable workplace, but also in cultivating truly representative and equitable systems that influence and drive our communities. UP has long supported its diverse talent. Union Pacific's Black Employee Network, established over 30 years ago, and LEAD, its employee resource group supporting women, were some of the first ERGs in the industry, with Ben being one of the first. And UP continues to aggressively drive leadership diversity as we look toward the future, with a goal of doubling female representation in our workforce by 2030. Black women have an important voice that should not only be part of the conversation, but lead the conversation. UP embraces that voice and is working to advance opportunities for development, career advancement, and leadership for our talent. As Black women leaders and voters, we have a unique perspective, power, and strength. And when we step into our power, the effect is game-changing. Our ability to embrace our culture and community and use the challenges that we have faced as a unifying and compassionate force in our leadership ultimately drives increased engagement and effectiveness, propelling our organizations and communities forward to more equitable and optimal outcomes. We must harness our power today, especially on Tuesday, and into the future to drive impactful and lasting change.
Thank you so much, Ms. Conley. And now I'm so excited and honored to present to you this brief presentation on behalf of our sponsors, Lyft, from the Miss Valerie Jarrett.
Hello, everyone. I'm Valerie Jarrett, and I am just delighted to once again have an opportunity to join the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation and lift up the important work that we're doing together around voting rights. 2020 has been such a tough year for all of us, and for Black women, the backbone of so many families and communities, we have continued to bear more than our fair share of the national struggles. Nevertheless, I am hopeful because we have seen so much activism on the streets of our country, people calling for change, people of all ages, of all backgrounds, of all ages, willing to say Black Lives Matter. And we're beginning to see change at the local level, and there's been a call for change at the national level. And Black women have stepped up to lead that call for change, and our voices are being heard. Now, with just days before the most important election of our lifetime, we are focused again on voting. Black women who've already had some of the highest voter rates in the country are stepping up. Women recognize that our rights are on the ballot. Our health care is on the ballot. Economic equality is on the ballot. But the COVID-19 pandemic and efforts to suppress our vote have forced us to grapple with new barriers to voting. In the last presidential election, it's estimated that more than 14 million people did not vote, in large part because they lacked a way to get to the polls. Voters in communities of color, where a lack of transportation can be a particular problem to voting, but they are eager to vote, need help, and that's what we intend to do. Our work at Lyft is intended to bridge that transportation gap and help remove some of the more difficult challenges around voting. So this year, Lyft has activated our Lyft Up Voting Access Program in partnership with nearly 20 not-for-profits around the country, including the National Urban League, to distribute free and discounted rides to the polls. We are also continuing our work with existing partners such as the Black Women's Roundtable, the National Federation of the Blind, and Student Veterans for America. LIFT has partnered with When We All Vote, where I serve as board chair, and we are working to ensure that every registered voter has a voting plan. We're working with More Than a Vote, the Social Change Fund, and HBCU Heroes to offer access to discounted rides to the polls on Election Day. Next week, on Election Day, we're offering 50% off on one ride of up to $10 to any polling location or drop off if you use the code 2020VOTE. That's 2020VOTE. This is so essential that we participate. 43% of registered voters didn't vote in the last presidential election, nearly 100 million Americans. We have an opportunity to change that this time. We need every single person in this country to register to vote. And I'm so proud that LIFT is trying to make that a little easier. Our turnout is going to affect the outcome of the election, and we've seen what great things can happen when Black women have their voices heard. So I ask you to make a plan and backup plan and a backup plan. Vote early if you can. Figure out how you can do it in a way that's safe. And then please ask everybody in your network to do the same. We're counting on you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, that was great. It's so cool and great to hear like organizations like LIFT doing what they can to help people get out the vote, because it's so important in this election. So now I'm so excited to introduce our moderator for today's session, Ms. Jakota Edie. Ms. Jakota Edie is the founder and CEO of Full Circle Strategies, a social impact consulting firm committed to advancing transformative change and global impact. Described as the Olivia Pope of Silicon Valley by Forbes magazine, Jakota is dedicated and a seasoned strategist with more than 20 years of experience in policy, advocacy, and movement building. Within her current practice, Jakota works with clients including corporate, nonprofit foundations, technology, and government organizations seeking to advance policy, ideas, and change. Jakota leads regulatory, legislative, and social impact initiatives at the federal and state level for leading nonprofits and within the C-suite of leading technology companies, helping to bridge the gap between Washington, D.C. and Silicon Valley. So I know she'll moderate a great session, and thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. And it's really always an honor to spend time with the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really excited about this conversation. I'm more excited about the panelists that we're going to engage with. So let's get started. I want to introduce our panelists and actually get into the conversation. I'm going to start with introducing Ms. Ashanti Golar. I'm excited. I actually feel like I'm just having a girlfriend's talk because I know most of these ladies and have worked with them and just I know the work that you're leading. So Ashanti Golar is the president of Emerge. And as the president of Emerge, which is the only organization dedicated to recruiting and training Democratic women to run for office, she leads the organization and steers its overall strategy and direction, overseeing the national staff as well as its affiliates across the country. I must also add that Ashanti is a longtime political strategist, very well known for her political strategy and the work that she does to make sure that we center Black and brown women. She has an award-winning podcast. If you have not checked out the Brown Girls Guide to Politics, you should check it out because it has been named one of the top political podcasts by Time Magazine and Marie Claire. Next, we will go to Nadia Brown. Nadia is the Associate Professor of Political Science and African American Studies at Purdue University. She's also the author of Sisters in the State House, Black Women and Legislative Decision-Making, and Distinct Identities, Minority Women in U.S. Politics. Nadia has a long history of studying the intersection of gender, politics, and also the intersection of political scientists in this space. And we're really excited to hear about all of the great work and the academic work that she has brought to this most important conversation. last but certainly not least, it's such an honor to have the Leah Daughtry, the Bishop Leah Daughtry amongst us. Leah is the national presiding prelate of the House of Lord of Churches, the fourth in succession. She was installed in October of 2019. In addition to leading in this most prestigious space, Leah is a longtime political strategist. She is really a dean of political strategy, serving as a guide to many of us brown girls in politics. She served as the CEO of the DNC convention twice. The only person in the entire country, and dare I say world, to serve in this capacity in 2 consecutive terms. She gave us the beauty of the nomination of then Senator Barack Obama, President Barack Obama, and also Secretary Hillary Clinton. In addition to that, Leah is the founder of Power Rising, which is an organization meant to uplift, galvanize, and center Black women in politics. Hello, panelists. How are you doing? We are very close to an historic election, and I want to get us started with the question. Our topic today is Black women in politics. So we heard the conversation prior to the start of this panel, and there's just a conversation around the country right now about Black women. We know that Black women's leadership in politics is incredibly important. I want to just hear from each of the panelists, and I'll start with you, Nadia, from your point of view. Why are Black women important in the politics, and why particularly in this moment?
Well, thank you. And it's such an honor to share space with you all. It makes my Black girl heart proud to be able to be here amongst you all. So as Joteka shared, I'm an expert in Black women's politics. My research most prominently focuses on Black women elected officials and candidates, and I've also moved over to do some work on Black women voters. The thing that I've come to share with you today is, why does Black women's leadership matters? It matters because Black women bring a different set of issues and policy priorities that otherwise would not be at the legislative decision-making table. In my own research, I've seen that Black women do things that electing white women or Black men just won't get us. So this idea that you can elect someone that shares a same racial identity or gendered identity and get the kind of outcomes that Black women need, that's just factually incorrect. So some examples of this are issues that are particularly of importance to Black women that they experience outside of what Black men or white women, like Black maternal health, the high rates of Black infant mortality. Or there are other issues like set aside programs for businesses and doing work with the state. So minority business enterprise zones that have often looked at women and minorities as 2 separate entities, which let women of color kind of have this loophole of figuring out which program they should apply to. And instead, Black women at the legislative decision-making table have said, what about us, right? These policies need to be relooked at, and they need to be ways that Black women are included, as opposed to being this loosey-goosey kind of outlet. The other things that we know that Black women matter is because they save American politics. So we saw this most prevalent in the 2017 special election of Doug Jones in the Alabama Senate race, where celebrities, political operatives, and the like all thanked Black women for delivering that much needed Senate seat to the Democrats. The Black women turned around and said, we didn't save America and democracy for you. We did this for ourselves. And so Black women are reasserting their own role in American policy and politics as these saviors that are really delivering these Democratic seats, but are doing so not for the party, but for themselves. And I want to talk a little bit about that as we go through the question and answer period. And then the other thing that Black women do, that I'll end with this, is they think about politics as a collective. They talk about we, us, community, as opposed to thinking about politics for me or for I. And in my research that I've done with Black women elected officials, they all come around to what electing me is a voice for the community. So I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brown. Now I want to take it over to you, Ashanti. Black women mattering in this most historic moment. Just give us your your thoughts here on why Black women matter in politics, but particularly in this moment.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm Ashanti Golar. I'm the president of Emerge. Very excited to be here with the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation and all of these amazing Black women. One of the things that I've been saying a lot is that we're actually in the middle of two pandemics, a health pandemic with COVID and a racial injustice pandemic. And we look at the policies that have been set forth over these past few months is Black women, elected officials and leaders who have been shaping this policy and who have been setting the way for others about this is how you should guide and lead your communities. We know that it was Mayor London Breed, the first Black woman mayor of San Francisco, a major city mayor, to start having people shelter in place. If you actually look at what she was talking about on Twitter the day that she was calling for people to stay at home, you had male mayors of other cities telling people to go about their business, that this was no big deal. She took a lot of heat for being direct, decisive, and frankly efficient. She saved a lot of people's lives in San Francisco. We'd look at Rachel Rollins, who is the first Black woman DA in Suffolk County in Massachusetts. We did say home is the safest place to make sure that you don't catch COVID, but she was the first one to raise her hand and say, hey, home is actually not the safest place for victims of domestic violence and abuse. We need to make sure that we're issuing emergency protective orders so that these women, these children, these families have a safe place to go. And because of her history being a victims' rights advocate, that is what she was bringing to the table. You didn't have anyone else thinking about that impact. We look at Jennifer Carroll Foy. She's in the Virginia House of Delegates. She was one of the women who flipped the seat in 2017. She's now running to be governor of Virginia. She would be the first woman governor of Virginia, the first Black woman governor in our country. Her main thing was to make sure that we were able to have safe, fair, vote by mail elections in Virginia. And I say that because I live in Virginia. So I'm really grateful to her for that because I was able to safely vote by mail. And I actually live right next to the post office. So it was super easy for me to drop off my ballot. And then we see women like Leslie Herod, who was the first Black openly LGBTQ woman elected in Colorado. She immediately made sure that we were focusing on police reform in her city, in her state, and then that was enacted. So as we're living through these times, these historical times, when we look back at history books, it's going to be Black women who are at the forefront of shaping our policies. It's their leadership that is getting us through. And at Emerge, we have 672 alums that are going to be on the November 3rd ballot, including Congresswoman Lucy McBath. And it's their leadership that we need during this time. I'm always saying, yes, we know that Black women voters were always at the top, but we don't always have to be the voters. We need to be the ones putting our name on the ballot because we know the issues. We know what our community needs. We know how to get things done. It's time for us to stop voting for everyone else to get it done and for us to have that seat at the table to get it done, but not just have that seat at the table to shake the table, to make sure that we're doing everything possible to better our communities.
Well, thank you for that, Ashanti. Leah, I want to go to you. You have been in politics for many years. I'm not going to say how many. You can choose to say how many, but you have seen really the evolution of Black women in politics, knowing that we have always been there. I mean, even from the launch of the women's suffrage movement, Black women was right there, front and center, even though they were forced to push to the back, they were always there. And you have been there for a very long time. Can you speak on this moment, why Black women matter in politics?
Well, thank you, Joteka, for the question and to the CBCF for this opportunity to really have this dialogue with my sister panelists and with those who are listening. I'm going to try to keep my answers short. I'm looking forward to the Q&A from the audience. So I'm going to try to say what I want to say and resist the temptation to be a preacher in this moment. This is a really historic moment, and part of it is having Kamala Harris on the ticket. She's certainly not the first Black woman. Of course, we know Charlotta Bass was on a major party ticket some years ago, but she is critical in this particular sphere. And what we're seeing now, Dr. Brown talked about Black women acting as a collective and acting in the collective, but we don't just think in the collective, we act in the collective, whether we're joining organizations, whether we're moving our own organizations that we're already members of, like our sororities, like our churches, like our unions, or whether we're creating new organizations that help to do the work. And we've reached this intersection in time where we are both leading organizations, moving organizations, starting organizations, as well as having more comfort in stepping to the forefront to actually lead in electoral office, in businesses, at academies. So all of this conjoins at this particular moment. So everywhere you look, there is a Black woman in leadership. And we don't just think about our families, we act as a group. No Black woman, see if you can find one, does anything by themselves. You always got your girl with you. You always calling somebody to come with you to do whatever it is you're doing. And when we step into these big enterprises, these highlighted, high profile opportunities, trust there is a sister that you brought with me, a sister or 10. And that's the way we run our lives. That's the way we have survived these 400 years in this country, by rolling as a collective. We've never had the luxury of thinking about only ourselves, only what's good for me. The only way we could survive through enslavement, through Jim Crow, through civil rights, to the present time, is by working and acting collectively, hand in hand, arm in arm, sometimes seen and sometimes not seen, but working and walking in the collective.
You know, Leah, you can go ahead and preach now. I think we could use a good preach going into this election. But I wanna double click on a point that you made, that Black women, when we go, we are not just thinking about ourselves, but that we're not just moving by ourselves, but we're acting as a collective, which has led to what we know statistically, and we heard it earlier on, that Black women vote. We're the highest voting bloc in the entire nation, that we have outvoted men. Black women have outvoted men, not just Black men, but outvoted men consistently over and over again, that we are the most loyal, we're the most consistent, but we have not always been seen. We have not always been the most respected nor the most valued. So I want to go to you, Ashanti, because your work really is about training and ensuring that women and Black women understand their power but run for office. Can you speak a bit about the transformation of more Black women running for office and what that has meant for the policies and the issues that impact Black women and their families?
Absolutely. And I'm going to keep my answers short, but we have to realize that we commemorated the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, but that was only 100 years for some women. That did not include Black, brown, and Indigenous women. So I always tell people it has not been 100 years for us. It's been 1965 and after. So frankly, we're playing catch up. So when people are saying, why aren't there more Black women? I don't understand. Well, guess what? We didn't have the same opportunities as everyone else. A lot of people are saying that with women running, particularly with Black women running, that it's a wave. And I disagree with that. It's a movement. It's a movement of Black women taking our rightful seats at the table and owning our political power. This is how it should be. Every year we should see more Black women running for office at all levels. But we have to realize those barriers do exist. We use the words electability and viability all the time. I personally can't stand those words because when you're saying, are they electable? Are they viable? What are we talking about? Straight white man. And when people go to use those words, that's immediately what they're talking about. Can they win in this district? We know that people will go to their network first when they're looking for candidates. Black women aren't in a lot of these networks. So that's why it's on us to make sure that we're encouraging the Black women in our networks to run for office. Another key barrier is fundraising. They will literally give a man who doesn't have the same experience as a Black woman $20,000 and give the Black woman $1,000. Those fundraising barriers are real, so we have to make sure that we're helping them with the fundraising piece. Low dollar donations, 5, 10, 15 every month, those add up. And we also have to be honest about the fact that gatekeepers are very real. They do see Black women in elected office as a threat to their power, because that's what it is. When there's more of us and we're owning our power, that means someone else is scared that they're not going to have the power. That's why we focus on recruiting and training women 365 days a year. At Emerge, we're celebrating 15 years. Our next 15 years is going to focus on the new American majority, particularly Black, Brown, and Indigenous women. So if we want to continue to see record numbers of Black women running, we got to dive in deep, and all of us as Black women have to make that commitment to making sure that we're asking Black women to run for office and supporting those Black women that are.
Well, Leah, I want to go to you because Ashanti raised a very important point. She talked about this question of electability, and we certainly saw in this political cycle a lot of conversation about, well, is she electability? She's too ambitious. She's everything. And you were very much a part of a movement of Black women that were very vocal about not only the need for this presidential ticket to have a Black woman on it as a vice presidential running mate, but you also were very much a part of a movement of Black women that were very vocal in speaking out against the racism and the sexism that continues to permeate in the political conversation. Could you speak on that and just really the burden that Black women particularly face in the political climate and this political election narrative that we're in right now?
Well, it's part of the history that we have in this country, that we carry the burden of both our race and our sex, if you want to call them burdens. I don't, but we carry those two things on our shoulders. And in this American society, that is particularly problematic. And I want to flag this as a particularly American problem, because in other countries, we're one of the last first world countries to have never elected a woman at the head of our government. In India, Britain, you name it, they've had women leaders. We are still the last vestige, and it goes back to the founding of our nation, the people who left Europe to get away from women's leadership to come here and found a country. So we are still struggling with those things. And as Black women brought here unwillingly, the specter of race adds into that. So everything we do, we have this double burden that we're bearing, or two little red trucks we're wheeling behind us every step of the way. And the country is still adjusting. Our nation is still dealing with racism. So we're not going to be exempt from the country dealing with racism. The country is still dealing with sexism. So we are natural inheritors of the sexism, including from our brothers, who often are battling with us for the same space. But what we know is that Black women have the talent, the capacity, and the ability to run, to win, and to lead. These 43 women in the Congressional Black Caucus are not all representing African-American districts. They are representing majority districts, or they're representing majority districts. Lauren Underwood is a great example, because people understand, there is a growing understanding that when a Black woman steps forward to lead, first of all, there is the boldness, there is the braveness, there is the fearlessness that comes to the table, but there is also our lived experience that allows us to see the voter, to see the consumer, to see the child, to see the organization in a different light. And so people begin to trust us, because they know there is nobody better to have on your side than a Black woman if you're going into a room and you're not sure, because we're going to fight, we can out-talk you, we outwork you, and we outfight you. And that's why we went to Joe Biden and said, Mr. Vice President, it is in your own best interest to select an African-American woman to be your running mate. Number one, she's going to help you win. because of the electoral map and where you need to get votes. A Black woman will help you win. Number two, we deserve it. We are the most loyal voting bloc in the nation. 72% of Black women are registered to vote, and we do vote. And when we go, we don't go by ourselves. We take our brothers, our uncles, our daddies, our nephews, whoever else with us. That's number two. And number three, it is the moral imperative and the historic right choice for you to put this myth of Black women's leadership to bed and to say concretely, Black women lead, and that's why I'm selecting a Black woman. And he took our advice.
He's a very smart man to take the advice of Black women. I believe you can always win with Black women.
All right. All right. We could go on and on and on. This is over an hour and a half video. You might want to look it up on YouTube and finish it at some point. But the sisters were making an excellent, excellent, excellent point. Many, many, many excellent points. Let me just read a little something here that I've read to you before. She cared enough to face those racks of pain that test the heart and drive most men insane. With pride and strength, she works from dawn to dusk. With aching hands, she never cries or fuss. A simple smile, a tear, and love's embrace. Fate unveils pain upon her face. She will not reach except to lend a hand. She does not long for heaven's promised land. Instead, she faces each day with a faint smile. And to the world declares it's all worthwhile. A braver woman I've never, ever seen to live a life of pain and not be mean. I must believe that God is on her side. I think of her with love and glowing pride. And when that day arrives and one must die, there'll be no deep regrets to make her cry. She'll wear a smile upon that lovely face and say, so long to all the human race. I am truly blessed to be married to Mary Elizabeth James. And we've been married for 50 years. And let me tell you, there's not a whole lot of people who can say that. One thing we can do if we want to respect women and have women participate is start with the women that are around us. The woman that, for example, that brought us into the world. The women that stand beside us when we may have done something wrong or have done something right. Women bring a very, very special approach to life and to politics. It's something that we don't have. I personally feel that there is a difference between a man and a woman. And God elected to create two separate sexes that we can come together as one. And each one of us, male and female, have characteristics that blend with the other. I know we have a whole trend today to lift up relationships between men and women, that kind of thing. We certainly don't want to put it down. We certainly don't want to condemn anyone to love who they love. But as for me and my house, I thank God that he made Adam and Eve so that we can respect and love each other and work together. And I'm saying to my brothers, we got a lot of sisters that are running for office, sisters that represent the entire family. That's another thing about women. When women go out and they run for things and they do things, they don't just think about themselves, they think about their children, they think about their father, they think about their mother, they think about their husband, they think about family. They think about family. And they are wonderful, wonderful caretakers of the system. And I want to say upright to Wanda, to all the women that are running an election. And by the way, this film was made before the election of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Kamala Harris is now Vice President of the United States. Thank God for that. But we have an election today in New York City for mayor. We have a situation where states all over the country are trying to take away from us our right to vote. So we need to blend together. And like the sister said, that every election that's taking place, more women vote than men. Because one thing, there are more women than there are men. That's just the way it is. Matter of fact, I don't really have a problem with that. None whatsoever. I have no problem with that. As long as we realize that we are a partnership, that we are working together, and that we are a family, and that we need to know that we need to love each other and lift up the bloodstained banner. There are violent extremists throughout this country. People that are shooting folks and using guns and other kinds of things to bring us down. And we can't just talk about what they do to men. They do some of the same things to women. Tell a woman that was shot in her own apartment, this with her boyfriend, just minding her own business. And this happens over and over again. So we need people that are going to lift up the bloodstained banner, lift up the truth and the light, and to make sure this doesn't happen. And I say, keep on keeping on, sisters. We need you. We support you. We love you. We certainly need the compassion, the intellect that you bring to the table. And that's why we raise up Black women, and we care about them, and we hope that they continue to do what they're doing. Thank you so much for tuning in. I always raise up my little part-time business down at 11 Farmers Market at 35 South 8th Street. And I invite you to come down. I got some fantastic things that come in the last 2 months, things that I never thought I'd be able to get again. I mean, genuine, authentic African art, and that you're gonna love it. So come down and pick something. I also got original oil paintings that are going for an ungodly low price. Original oil paintings from Guinea-Bissau, West Africa. Things that are, I mean, if you're human, you're gonna love. They're positive, they're gorgeous, they're colorful, and made just for you. So brothers and sisters, friends and neighbors, this is Richard James and Richard signing off. Thank you so much, staff, owners of the station, Chris Thomas, his wife and his family, for giving us the ability to communicate with you and supporting us in every way. God bless you. May heaven smile upon you, your neighbor and your friend, saying so long till I see you next week. Take care.
Thank you again for tuning in to the Richard James Show. Our African and our African American programs are set up to educate you on what's going on in this world. And thank you for taking out the time to listen. Let's hear from you sometime also. So this is your neighbor and your friend signing off. Until I see you again next week, and hear from you again next week. So long. God bless.